in-depth introduction I've ever had. The first best introduction was when the fellow who was supposed to introduce me did not show up, and I had to introduce myself. I am really overwhelmed. This is a rather difficult program to be at this point on. Mark made me very happy. And that poem and that song just moved me very much. But I have to tell you that to be a Baha'i speaker and to travel around and visit the Baha'is, the thing that maybe you might not realize that is so clear to me is that no matter where you go in this Baha'i world, whether you're in Chile or whether you're in Bolivia or whether you're in Panama or whether you're in Jamaica, no matter where you are, you always have the best view in the world. I wish that you could see how beautiful you are. This is beautiful. And I thank you for being here, making this beautiful place so beautiful. As we were driving in last night, I saw that, God, this is a pretty amazing place. This is the first time I've ever been to Wisconsin on purpose. And I saw this lake, and it seems that these folks, they own the lake. The sunset was so beautiful, I'm sure that they own that. But these big gates, flowers, and a guardhouse, for crying out loud. You got to go through it, you know. The golf course, the trees, the facility. It's just, isn't this place beautiful? I really thought that this is what God would have done if he had money. And so at least we get to use it. It's really nice. The morning here was so beautiful. Have you ever had such a beautiful morning? I mean, it just couldn't be any better, really. The problem with morning, however, is that it comes so early. In our community, we have a little newsletter. You know, every once in a while we have dawn prayers. And it says dawn prayers will begin sharply at noon. So I think there'd be a lot more dawn prayers if we could have them, let's say, in the evening. But this place was beautiful. I saw two youth out here, and they said they were so excited to be here, but they got very upset. They were kind of talking about deep, heavy spiritual things. They got very upset last night because the sun went away. And they started to think, what does that mean? You know, very heavy. You know, you can tell that they're freshmen in college. You know? What does it really mean when the sun goes down? Where is it? Where is its reality? And so they stayed up all night worrying about where the sun was until finally it dawned on them. I'll keep going until you start groaning. Then I get into my talk. Don't groan. Laughter is very good. I'm so glad that Mark's got us laughing. Because, you know, scientists will tell you now that laughter is really a very important part of health. And that if you really want to be healthy, you just have to laugh at a lot of things. And it's just so clear to me that he who laughs, laughs. And that you don't groan. Don't groan. I've got pages of these things. I really like it when Mark said, you know, we secretly, you know, want someone to become a Baha'i. You know, don't we see a famous person? Why isn't that person a Baha'i? And the person I always thought of who would be a wonderful Baha'i was Walter Cronkite. I mean, really, everybody likes him. He's very respectable, he's honest, and when he says stuff, people really listen. I mean, can you imagine he says, you know, aloha friends, here now the news. And then read the news. And then 19 times you say, don't forget, tonight is a 19-day feast. See you there. You know? And then everybody, I think, would go to feast. You know? And I often wondered, why is it that God doesn't give us somebody like Walter Cronkite? And as we study the faith and as we become conscious of God's plan and how God does things, we know that God does not do many things that mean anything with big people. He usually does things with small people, with people who are not very famous. And it is really the power of God working in the world through people who have no ability, that he gives them power to achieve something. You know, just think of the examples we have. God's chosen people. He's looking around the world and he tries to find the people who he is going to choose to talk to. And he could have picked the Hittites. You know, these guys had really big suits of armor and great swords and all. He could have picked the Amalekites, the Belemalites, and all these other ites that you find in Genesis. And who did he pick? He picked this old couple. They weren't even Jewish yet. He picked this old couple, Abraham and Sarah, right? And he says to Abraham, you will be the father of the chosen people. Abraham is, I mean, he's like 100. Sarah was 100. They were really old. They're ready to retire, you know? Ready to, you know, they're fully vested in their pension plan. And wanted to go to Hawaii or someplace and kind of live out their life. And he says to Sarah, you will have a child. Sarah said, right. Abraham was, I mean, you know, just not interested in those things. And so, what does he do? He takes these old people who can't even have a child, and he makes this man, Abraham, the father of this nation. Why? Why didn't he pick a powerful nation that was there already? He takes nothing, and he makes something fantastic out of it. And so whenever we feel like nothing, that's exactly the attitude he wants us to have. Whenever we feel, oh, this is terrible. I can't do anything. Great. That's perfect. I'm so depressed. Great. Wonderful. You're getting there. You're really getting close. Because what God wants is he wants people who can become very small to then do very big things. I really like Morris's reference to the rutabagas. I thought that was great. Really nice. We have, because we live in a real ethnic kind of area where all these ethnic groups are there, it's really a wonderful kind of thing. That no matter what kind of joke you tell, it offends someone. You know, my wife's father is Jewish, and so you can't tell Jewish jokes. And part of her family is Polish, and you can't tell Polish jokes. And unfortunately, her brother is a rutabaga. So we can't even tell rutabaga jokes. I was in Montana. I don't want to say that the people in Montana are FLOW, but I was in Montana once, and guy said, oh, I got a great joke for you. And I said, well, please, I don't want to hear any ethnic jokes. I don't want you to single out any minority or any group. He said, that's no problem, because we have rutabaga jokes. I said, great. He said, there are these two rutabagas walking to the synagogue. I said, oh. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I was talking to a minister in our town. He's a wonderful guy, a really terrific fellow. And he said he knows that I travel a lot, and my wife travels a lot, and our Baha'i community is really rather active. Some of us would say it's kind of hyperactive Baha'i. And he said, you know, you people do wonderful things. And this minister really loves the faith. He's Baptist minister. And he said, you know, you do so many things. You travel, you do this. And I always bring him pictures and little things from the Holy Land. And he's a very nice guy. He's a wonderful fellow. And he said, you know, I had to go to seminary for so many years. I had to go to college. I had internships. I had to be a minister here and a minister there and a youth teacher here. And I got paid for all these things, and they buy me my clothes, and they give me a house to live. And he said, you know, I really have to be good because they've given me really a wonderful life. And you know, this is my business. This is my salary. And that's why I'm good. He says, what? He says, but you Baha'is, you're good for nothing. I feel I should talk about peace, at least in a very serious way for a moment. I want to tell you about a sheriff. This is a true story. A sheriff in a town who wanted to keep his town very peaceful. And right down the middle of the street of this town walked of three-legged dogs. This is true. And this three-legged dog had a 10-gallon hat on, 6 guns around his belly, kind of walking down the middle of the street. Looked pretty mean. Sheriff said, look, this is a peaceful town. We don't want any trouble. Three-legged dog said, Sheriff, I'm not looking for any trouble. I'm just looking for the man who shot my paw. Now you should see yourself. You're going, oh, and about 20 of you are there going, they're writing it down. I know. I know how you Baha'is are. You groan and then you steal the joke. As long as you steal the right one. I'm glad that after I talk, you're going to hear about the fund and the national fund, and you'll never believe it. We're still broke. One of those interesting things is we run this religion on no money. Incredible. I mean, the day is going to come. We're going to have to mortgage the temple or something. But we're thinking about the fund and talking about the fund and about how other religions raise money. And, you know, some religions, you give 10% of your income and then you do that kind of a contribution. And Eloy and Ella last night was mentioning that in Canada they did a survey, and the survey showed that the Baha'is gave about 1.5% of their income to the funds of the faith. 1.5%. And in the U.S. we've done some talking about it, and it seems to be about 1%, and maybe even a little less of our income. And we need money so badly to do so many of the things that need to be done that I think that this religion is finally fit to be tied. Come on, friends. I woke up last night and thought of that. Which means I shouldn't have eaten for dinner what I did. How about if I read for you one of my favorite quotations? Because it is so happy, and because this conference is so happy, because the news of the fourth epoch is so happy. This is from the writings of Baha'u'llah. In this day, a great festival is taking place in the realm above. For whatsoever was promised in the sacred scriptures hath been fulfilled. This is the day of great rejoicing. It behooveth everyone to hasten towards the court of his nearness with exceeding joy, gladness, exaltation, and delight. We are living in that day when whatsoever was promised in the sacred scriptures hath been fulfilled. Fourth epoch has a lot to do with that. The ancient promise of God is that we're going to live in peace. Isn't that right? That we're going to take all the swords, and we're going to make plows out of them, and we're going to take all the spears, and we're going to make pruning hooks. Men will study war no more. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. You remember all those wonderful promises. That has been promised in the Holy Book, and now Baha'u'llah tells us that this has been fulfilled. The seeds of this peace are planted, and now finally, nearly 100 years after the passing of the manifestation of God, those seeds are beginning to germinate, move, and they are shaking the entire world. Some of the highlights of the fourth epoch, for me, began in Haifa. Began with a conference at the Universal House of Justice called in December and January of this past year, and invited all of the counselors, the newly appointed counselors, to come. I cannot tell you how excited and frightened I was to go. But I got to travel with Wilma Brady. How many of you know Wilma Brady? She is just a doll. I tell everybody when we travel, I say, look, this is my grandmother. She hits me once in a while when I say that. I adore her. We traveled together from Kennedy Airport in New York to Haifa. And before we left for Haifa, we got a little message from the World Center and said, we're going to have a big party for the counselors during the last night of your conference, and we need a coffee pot. Would you please bring a coffee pot? Now, they weren't talking about one of these little coffee pots. They were talking about big coffee pots, 100-cup coffee pot. And so, because Wilma was such a good person, I fixed it so that she would check it with her luggage. Good old Wilma, she said, oh, sure, no problem. You know, the coffee pot's off. Well, we ended up getting to Rome to switch planes, to switch from Pan Am to El Al, to two terrific airlines these days. And the El Al security people did not like the way this coffee pot looked. They didn't like this coffee pot at all. And so after they took about an hour to figure out, you know, why is this woman who is this tall and black traveling with this guy who is this tall and Irish, why are they traveling together, and why are they bringing in this very suspicious coffee pot? And I did really what any true Baha'i would do. I said, it's her coffee pot. So, I didn't know she had a coffee pot. And so they sent Wilma downstairs to go and look and stand by this coffee pot while they unpacked it, while they x-rayed it, while they looked at it. And they asked her all these great questions, you know. What kind of coffee do you use? Why don't you drink tea? Can't they buy a coffee pot in Israel? I mean, all these great questions, you know. How many volts does this coffee pot? How many cups? How many? Wilma says, I don't know. She just wants a coffee pot. And so it was her innocence and my lying that she finally was able to get on the plane. But while she was downstairs, the security guy, who had been really nasty to me for about an hour before they separated us and sent Wilma down to inspect her coffee pot, he saw me, you know, sitting right there in the Rome airport next to the El Al ticket counter. This happened to be Christmas Day. And I was sitting there, I was reading a book, but there were no chairs. I was sitting in one of the places like where you come and put your luggage, you know, one of those places. And he came over to me, and he was just perfect size seat for me. And he came over and he said, I'm sorry that it takes so long for all of this security business. He said, your friend will be up soon, I'm sure. I said, well, that's okay. And he said, you know, it's really for your own safety that we do this. I said, oh, it's okay, it's fine. And I reached in my jacket pocket, and I had a couple of pictures of my kids. And I said, these are my kids, and they really want me to come home safely, and so I thank you very much for being so nice and taking care of me. And he reached in his jacket pocket, and he pulled out pictures of his kids, and he said, my kids want me to come home safely too. And he lives in Haifa. But he's working in Rome. And so after a while, Wilma came up, and we got on the plane, and we went, and it was lovely. And 2 days later, we saw in the Jerusalem Post a picture of this young man who showed me the pictures of his kids. Because it was 2 days later that the terrorists came into that airport and attacked that flight that Wilma and I were on only 2 days later with hand grenades and machine guns. And there was a picture of this fellow with his arm, looked like maybe 5 or 7 holes in his arm from a machine gun, obviously. And he's being helped across the airport by another security fellow. He wasn't killed. None of the security people were killed. And the crazy thing that we learned is that the flight that was supposed to be attacked was the Christmas Day flight. The flight that Wilma and I were on. And that these terrorists came down with this incredible flu. And they couldn't move. They couldn't get out of bed. And so they delayed their attack. Instead of a Christmas Day symbolic massacre of our flight, they came 2 days later. And as I saw the picture of this young fellow, about my age, with a couple of kids that kind of look like my kids, I realized how much this world needs Baha'u'llah. that if the world was in peachy shape, we wouldn't need him. But because we know what kind of shape the world is in, we know that the world must have this healing message. The House of Justice welcomed us in the most wonderful way. Just an extraordinary experience. And there are many details that I could tell you about the conference that we had. Loyanello was here. We were there together. It was just closing his eyes and shaking his head. It was really a gift that I think we'll look upon in the worlds of God as being a priceless gift. The way they treated us. We didn't have special colored badges, God help me, committee, forgive me, with all kinds of ribbons and flippers and things on. And, there was no special place where you were supposed to sit. There was no special kind of transportation if you were a hand of the cause or a member of the House of Justice. In fact, we went out to Baha'i, and I'm sitting on a bus. They took us on a bus out to Baha'i. And on one side of me is a member of the House of Justice, and across the aisle from me is a hand of the cause. And here I am. I thought, my God, what am I doing here, really? I don't even deserve to be on this bus, But there were no long limousines, and there was no, van tools or anything. We all rode out there together. It was fantastic. There were no long speeches. There was nobody saying how smart they were and how dumb all you unwashed counselors from all around the world are. You people who live in the material West who don't know what a prayer means. I mean, there's none of this. There were some comments about the hectic pace of our life in this country, but they were all made very nicely. And it was an experience that was quite unforgettable, really unforgettable. The quality of the consultation in the message that the House of Justice sent said that the quality of the consultation, it reached such heights of spirituality, of illumination, that we were all astonished. We were absolutely all astonished. They gave us a perspective on the world, on where we have come from and where we are going. They gave us a perspective on the future. And I'll just share with you briefly what's coming up in the future that we can look forward to. 1985 they described as a year that really was a year where we turned a corner. Something happened in the world. Obviously, it was the emergence from obscurity of the faith. But 1985 had tremendous events. The peace statement was issued, the new appointments of the Continental Board of Counselors from all over the world, the 7-year plan was ending. As we know in this country, the President received a peace statement, the Secretary General of the United Nations received a peace statement from the House of Justice, and how blessed this country is, and how blessed the United Nations is, that it would move close enough to Baha'u'llah to accept the peace statement from God's Universal House of Justice. This is a blessing for our country, and it's a blessing for the UN. And anyone we can give this to, it blesses them. Don't ever think that they're helping the faith. We are helping them. 1985 is a pretty hot year. Then comes 1986, which is the year we're in. The 70th anniversary of the Tablets of the Divine Plan. The beginning, initiation of the 6-year plan, and the new kinds of consultation that we've been having, for instance, in our town meetings, so that we can get the information that we need to write the plan. How many people love their town meetings? How many people were just thrilled about this thing? I read the reports from all the town meetings, and you know what most of them said? Let's have another one. Let's do another one right away. Let's not go home. Let's throw out the agenda and stay together. It's fantastic, really. It was like we were so much in love, we wanted to stay there. The collaboration between the board members, the assemblies, the assistants, the National Assembly, the counselors, the hands of the cause, the collaboration has reached an incredible level. In November of this year, 1986, we will have new appointments for the first term of auxiliary board members. Board members have served without a term until this year, and now begins a new 5-year term. We have the International Year of Peace. We have incredible things happening in the growth of the faith. We had, for instance, the head of state of the Cook Islands contact the Universal House of Justice and ask, please, may I come to Haifa to consult with you about peace? The House of Justice said, please come. And the head of state and the First Lady of the Cook Islands arrived in Haifa, stayed for 2 days, consulted with the Universal House of Justice in its chamber, the first non-Baha'i to come into the chamber of the House of Justice and consult with it about world peace, a head of state of the Cook Islands. Then the next day they went out to Baji and talked some more about peace. and how we can bring this about. Extraordinary things are happening in the faith. Just wonderful. You know, the guy's plane, excuse me for being real informal with you, the fellow's plane lands in Jerusalem, a big limousine pulls up and picks up this head of state and drives them where? To Jerusalem? To the governor? No, drives them to the House of Justice building to go to consult with the Universal House of Justice as a body. These are extraordinary things that are happening. 1987, as we look a little bit into the future, the 75th anniversary of what? Of Abdu'l-Baha's visit to the United States. I think we're going to see many celebrations during that year. Tremendous potency. A lot of people will be traveling around and perhaps following the steps of Abdu'l-Baha. 1988, we will have the International Convention in Haifa, which will be the 6th election for the Universal House of Justice. Following that election, there will be new appointments for the International Teaching Center. This is the pattern that they followed in the past. 1990, during the 6-year plan, we will have the new appointments for the Continental Board of Counselors for an additional 5-year term. In 1991, the 5-year term that we're starting this year for the board members expires, and then new appointments will be made at that time. Rizwan 1992. Listen to this. We end the 6-year plan at Rizwan 1992. We immediately begin what the House of Justice calls a holy year. This is a year that begins Rizwan 1992 and ends Rizwan 1993. And during that holy year, there will be many events, because 1992 is the 100th anniversary of 2 extraordinarily important things. Firstly, it is the 100th anniversary of the passing of the manifestation of God. And on May 29th in Baji, there will be convened a conference of Baha'is from all over the world. Baha'is from every country will attend this conference. They will be invited, and especially meaningful, according to the House of Justice, will be the attendance at this conference of native indigenous peoples representing as many tribes and as many ethnic groups in the world. We have thousands of those groups. At the same time, in all of the houses of worship and in Baha'i communities everywhere, the Baha'i world will join together and commemorate the 100th anniversary of the passing of Baha'u'llah. It is also the 100th anniversary of the institution of Baha'u'llah's covenant, naming Abdu'l-Baha as his successor and the interpreter of his writings. And that great, extraordinary event will be celebrated on November 26th with 40,000 plus Baha'is in the city of the Covenant, New York City, for the Second World Congress, the Second Baha'i World Congress, which will be convened November 26, 1992. I would encourage you all to make your hotel reservations as soon as possible. These 2 events, the commemoration of the passing of Baha'u'llah, the commemoration of the 100th anniversary of his covenant, this gives us a holy year filled with extraordinary and wonderful potential. Rizwan 1993, several things happen. The holy year ends. The International Convention in Haifa will be convened, the 7th International Convention in Haifa. At that time, the new teaching plan that will go from 1993 to whenever, I don't know, will be launched, and this holy year will have ended, and we will be beginning a new plan. They had this out on a beautiful chart, just laid out for us in just the most wonderful way, so that we can see where we're going. They are planning very far into the future, preparing the Baha'is. We should know where we're going. We should know what major events are happening. I'll just give you briefly what some of the subjects of consultation at the Counselors' Conference was because of this 4th epic business. A global desire for spirituality. This is what the House of Justice is proceeding. How do we capitalize on this? Populations of people who are very receptive to the faith. The need for the immense growth of the faith, both in numbers and in financial resources. The need for the growing quality of Baha'i institutions. The need for an increased and deeper understanding of the covenant. Spiritual atmospheres. How can we create spiritual atmospheres where people in even the most materialistic societies will turn toward their Creator. The project of the Ark, the completion of the buildings around the Ark in Haifa. We were introduced to the new Office of Public Information, where their feeling is that we can go over the governments of the world and we can go directly to the people of the world. Social and economic development projects. They describe some of the nearly 800 projects that are going on and what great benefits this is to the Baha'i community. Baha'i scholarship, to help relate the teachings of the faith to current problems, to be in the world. The posture of the House of Justice, as they described it to us, was extraordinary. They are trying to decentralize as much as possible. They are pushing as many of their responsibilities to the International Teaching Center and to many of the staff and offices at the World Center so that they are free to influence the world. It is an extraordinary pattern of growth that the House of Justice has adopted for itself as well. The big news, of course, happened and came to us on January 2nd when the message that we all know that announced the fourth epoch was read to us at this counselors' conference. We know that there are three ages in the faith: the heroic age, the formative age, and the golden age. The heroic age is broken up into three periods: the ministry of Baha'u'llah, the ministry of Abad, the ministry of Baha'u'llah, and the ministry of Abdul-Baha. The formative age began in 1921, and in 1921 began the first epoch of the formative age. That went from 1921 to 1944. And it was during this time, really, the infancy of the Baha'i administration and the formation of the local assemblies, learning about consultation and all this. The second epoch, 1944 to 1963, the teaching plans, the 10-year crusades, the International Baha'i Council, the Hands of the Cause, and finally the formation of the Universal House of Justice. The third epoch, 1963 to 1986, vast teaching victories, entry by troops, 100,000 Baha'is in places like Bolivia, 1 million Baha'is in places like India. The completion, really, of the administrative order, with the assistants, the counselors, the International Teaching Center. We now have it complete. And now we are entering the fourth epoch. I want to just tell you, my time is really almost up. I feel like the Egyptian mummy. I'm pressed for time. But I have another shot at you tomorrow. And I just want to tell you the kinds of things that we're thinking about. What the town meetings have called for. I'm just going to give you a list of 9 things that I feel emerging from the Baha'i community. And then I'm going to give you 9 reactions very quickly that the institutions of the faith feel is needed for this fourth epoch. And perhaps just by listing these things, we'll get a flavor of what this fourth epoch will be like, what will characterize the fourth epoch. Okay. The Baha'is want, number 1, more religion in their religion. Number 2, they want a less frenetic pace. They want to slow down. They want to stop neglecting important things. Number 3, they want stronger faith. They want a personal relationship to Baha'u'llah and to his covenant. Number 4, they want stronger families. They want marriage preparation. They want youth to have the correct idea about marriage. We could do entire summer school classes on any of these. It's a shame to just list them to you. Number 5, they want stronger local spiritual assemblies so that they can turn to them. We know that this is Baha'u'llah's pattern, and we want them to be stronger. Number 6, we want stronger networks. We want to have more connections internationally with our Baha'i brothers and sisters, don't we? Sister cities, adopting pioneers, these kinds of things. Number 7, we want to have stronger networks locally. We want to have time to be friends. We want to improve the quality of our communities and especially the quality of our peace. Number 8, we want to have freer consultation. We want to be able to be ourselves. We want to be able to express what is in our hearts and have our serious questions answered. Number 9, we want to have more comfort with diversity. Not just diversity of racial groups or ethnic groups or income level, but diversity, for instance, about teaching. We want to be more accepting of that. More accepting about diversity in ideas about raising funds for the faith, personality, and the way we think about things. Those are the 9 things that I see coming from the community. And in the institutional aspect of the formative age, the fourth epoch, I just want to list these 9 things. The desire of the institutions of the faith, as I see them, these are my personal perspective, is number 1, get out of your way. And if we find ourselves in your way, let's move. Number 2, support initiatives. So when we see initiative, to support it and to really help it along. Number 3, facilitate your success. Make it easy for you to fulfill your desires. Number 4, enhance networking and to facilitate the connections that you obviously want to make. Number 5, create resources. Resources that you can then draw on and use in your local community. Number 6, create a spiritual atmosphere where the faith can grow, where the flicker of faith can then grow into a flame. Number 7, foster and promote creativity, individuality, and diversity. Number 8, my favorite, replace criticism with praise, both for people and for institutions, and that we can build a pattern that the community and the world can emulate. And number 9, round up the family of man and have a love feast, a celebration of thanksgiving to our Lord. I have many things to tell you, but you cannot bear them now. This very nice lady just held up a sign that says 0. Which means, friends, that I have had it. I'm going to tell you one last thing, and then I'm going to get off before they throw the sign at me. At the Peace Conference, 3 people spoke, eminent people. Maybe I'll tell you more about it tomorrow. But they had a wonderful message for the Baha'is. Irvin Laszlo said, science proves that Baha'u'llah is correct. The new sciences prove that the manifestation of God has put this power into the earth. You Baha'is know through revelation what we are just discovering in science. And you've known it for 140 years. And then he said, I wish you were a little more aggressive at telling people about it. C. Eric Lincoln, distinguished anthropologist, the expert on religion in America, said that it is in the Baha'i faith, and it was recognized as early as 1944, that the Baha'i faith had the answer for the racial problem in this country. And then he said, why aren't you influencing more people? You Baha'is, you have it. An exile from South Africa, a lady named Mrs. Chabaku, stood up, talked about being thrown out of that country. Her classmate was Desmond Tutu. She came to a talk that I gave to the youth. She watched the people. She saw the people together, loving each other. She read the peace statement in one night and came back with 100 questions. This woman is fantastic. And she stood up and she said, I hope you will forgive me for saying that you are neglecting the human race by keeping this a secret, but you have the answer. Friends, we should not be embarrassed by this religion. We do not have time to be embarrassed that we believe in God and that God has spoken again. We need to do 3 things. We need to become contagious, we need to become courageous, and we need to spread enthusiasm. Contagious, the word contagious means to touch. We have to spread this. We must become contagious. We have to be courageous, that we have the power in our hearts to stand up and do it. Courageous means to have heart. And we need to do it with enthusiasm. We need to give the world enthusiasm. And the world needs this so much because of what the word enthusiasm means. Enthusiasm comes from a Greek word, entheos. It means to give people God. To give them God. And I don't know what we're going to wait for. Let's not be afraid. Let us not be afraid of tomorrow, because God is already there, waiting for us. Let us not be afraid of anything, because at our party in Haifa, when we used the coffee pot, we sang, He's got the whole world in His hand. And we all sat in Abdul Baha's house, and we're singing, He's got the whole world, He's got the little bitty baby. And then we sang a terrific new chorus, He's got the fourth epoch in His hand. And so do you. Thank you very much.